Members of the public, I apologize for the delay. I'm awaiting a third member to have a quorum. Thank you. Our third member's almost here. It's all right. I'll let you at least sit down. Pardon? They'll probably hear me when I... Okay, having a quorum and it being 6:50 on Tuesday, May 10th, I'll call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order. So, present tonight, Linda Vacan, Chair, Counselor Bartley, Counselor Lisi. Yes. Second. So I have a motion to open the public hearing that has been continued. And all in favor? Aye. So item 2 is the zone change application of Frontier Development at 1575 Northampton Street, former Lynch School, map 105, block 00, parcel 061, from current zone R-1A to proposed zone BH. At our last meeting, we did receive a recommendation from the planning board, which we did not have any discussion on because the public hearing had been continued to tonight. And the planning board has recommended to this committee that we approve the zone change. It was a 2-to-1 vote coming to us from the planning committee. So before we open it up to the public, are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Other members of the council? Counselor Greenie is here. Counselor McGivern is also here. Counselor Lopez also in the audience. Are there any comments?
Sure, I'll make a comment.
Counselor Greenie.
Yes, I'll make a comment on this zone change. I'm opposed to the zone change for the Lynch School. For the last 6 years, I've been opposed to it. I feel that it's absurd for the city of Holyoke to continue to pay $330,000 in rent for 57 Suffolk Street for the school department offices while we have a freestanding public building that's been available right along. It's cost the taxpayers $1.6 million over the years to continue this process. I think there's going to be a serious traffic problem on Route 5 if it turns into a strip mall. I've seen no concrete plans. Apparently, there is somebody here with concrete plans tonight for that property. I've heard excuse after excuse. I've heard asbestos. I've heard this. I've heard everything. In the meantime, my constituents, and they're the people who talk to me on a day-to-day basis, are opposed to another CVS or some other strip mall or something like that in that property. And they prefer to take the school department offices, move them out of Suffolk Street, bring them to the Northampton Street location, where not only could you put school department offices, you could bring the property on Main Street that is the warehouse. It has a woodworking shop, it has a print shop, it has a cafeteria, a gymnasium, an athletic field behind it, special education classes could be conducted there. It has an inner courtyard for parking, it's on a bus line, and I believe that this is a misuse of that school if we change that zone to a business zoned area. I've been talking about this for 6 years. The facts are there. It's been in the paper. I've written letters to the paper. I'm starting to get some people in the community who believe that this is a good idea, and I implore them to come to the next committee meeting, the next council meeting, to express their opinions on this property. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor Greenie.
We're not at the public hearing.
Pardon?
Are we at the public hearing part, or were there other counselors that wanted to speak?
We are. So at this time in the public hearing, it's open to, and you may approach, and when you approach the microphone, please give us your name and address. And then if you could take 2 minutes to make your points, that would be great.
I'll try to give you 2, but I'm long-winded. My name is Jonathan Moak, and I'm from 324 Walnut Street, Holyoke, Massachusetts. I come to you this evening in 2 phases, one as a resident, but one as the director of Holyoke Youth Baseball, the vice president of Holyoke Youth Football, the director of Holyoke Boys Suburban Basketball, who uses Lynch Gym throughout the season for practices, and also the Lynch Gym for intramural basketball, volleyball, softball, indoor soccer, a scope of things that goes on at the Lynch Gym. So I stand here talking about, maybe not my constituents, but I talk about the 300 to 500 children a week that come to Lynch School between the months of October through March during the winter months to have activities, to bring in games, to bring in sports, and to have an activity for our youth. If many people in the city of Holyoke understand, the gym space here in the city of Holyoke is outrageous. You have programs that run throughout the city, and gyms are locked up, and so on and so forth, and so it creates a hard time for our youth to have a place to go and play, to be active. And that's just not kids, K through 5 or anything. It goes to the high school level. Lynch Gym has also attracted rental dollar values and rent through Parks and Rec, driving in people who rent the facilities, such as AAU basketball and so on, et cetera, and that comes down the I-91 corridor. So I speak to you on behalf of those of my individuals, our youth. In addition to that, behind the property that's about to be sold is also a football field and also a high school-sized baseball field. That's used throughout the entire season, throughout the entire year, based on the season of whatever sports or whatever activity is going on. So I'm coming to you asking that any proposal or any investment into that property be put into highlighting what's already there as an attraction. That attraction is that sports. That could be a possible sports complex here in the city of Holyoke. It's common sense to me. Now, I understand that I'm just speaking as a coach or as a city. I'm speaking about youth, and I don't want to take it that way, because if you connect that dot from youth and what's already in place, and you take that into marketing, that marketing of a CVS located directly across the street from a Walgreens or a Rite Aid, I can buy my blood pressure in any 2 of those locations. Why not market that location to something that could highlight or possibly invest into that football field, that baseball field, and a gymnasium that 5 years ago, me and people from the Parks and Rec and our children cleaned up to make it more active and to bring people in, families, friends, games, and so on, which highlights the city of Holyoke. The city of Holyoke is a gateway city, and you're talking about one of the main arteries into I-91. Come right down there. What do you see? A Walgreens. Now a CVS to the left and a Rite Aid to the right. I just think if we market that property based on the sports complex that's already there, based on the departure of a sports authority that's leaving the Holyoke Mall, not only could we get more dollar value on that property, but we could also come up with an agreement that would invest in the property that's already in place. And I think that would highlight our city. I think that would bring people into our city, and people, whether they're going to a concert at Mount Tom or hiking in our beautiful parks or our mountain ranges, or just coming to a football game, a basketball game, or whatever's going on, right there, and what's in place would be a beautiful thing for this city and highlight our gateway city. Another pharmacy is just not going to do it when we have 2 in the city of Holyoke. That's my opinion, and thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You can take the mic out if it's easier.
Thank you. How are you? Good evening. I'm Darlene Elias, and I live at 17 Clark Street, and I live about 1.5 miles away from Lynch School. So I come to you today with concerns as a resident about the Lynch School being converted to a CVS and a strip mall or whatever the plans are. I also have some sentimental value too because I'm a Lynch graduate. But my concern is the congestion and the traffic on Route 5. As you are aware, we've had an overdevelopment of businesses going on Route 5. I've been living in my home now for about 15 years, and I pay taxes, and my taxes continue to increase. And when I moved on my block, you know, I really appreciated the neighborhood and the landscape and what it had to offer. But as the years progress, what I see is a lot of traffic and a lot of problems going up and down Route 5. You have the charter school that went in and got expanded. You have the businesses up near the Holyoke Mall. You have so many things that have come into place now that, you know, even on a slow day in the morning when I'm trying to get out of my street, it takes me a really long time. So I'm really concerned with that congestion. I know that the residents in the area had fought against Walmart and that coming into town because of similar reasons. It is a residential neighborhood. And I think that with all this business development, you're minimizing the impact that it's having on the residents, the quality of life with the residents. So I'm really concerned about that. But I also want to echo the sentiments of Howie Graney and of Jonathan Moquin, that property can be better developed or better utilized to do something else. Why detract from the landscape of Holyoke? Why not enhance the landscape of Holyoke? One of the concerns that I have is this thing of attracting big box businesses. Why do that? In particular in this case, having another CVS with two other CVS's there, a Rite Aid, a Walgreens. These are not things that are providing opportunities for enhancement of the quality of life in Holyoke, whether it's for adults or for youth. And I think that that's really important. I remember the days when I used to take my kids sledding behind Lynch School. This piece is, Lynch is a place that many people value, not only the residents in the area, but people who used to go to school there. And as I speak with people in the community, everybody has concerns. One, not only that, you know, Lynch would be used for such a place as CVS, but two, that you're not really considering what you may be converting the property to. So I really ask you to take a really serious look at that. I know that we can do better as a city. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Wilson?
Hi, I've never been tall. I'm Attorney Thomas Wilson, and I'm here as capacity representing Frontier Development. But I do want to answer some of the things that have been said before we get into the issue of traffic, which was the main reason this meeting was continued. Councilor McGivern and others asked for traffic studies, which, as you can see, we provided, and we have specialists here who will explain that to you. But one of the things is, first of all, to answer a few things, is Anniversary Field has nothing to do with this. In fact, the road going up to Anniversary Field, if this goes through and my clients do it, that road will be fixed, all the potholes and enhanced and everything. Anniversary Field stays the same. Second is, everybody's been talking about, and now I think I'm speaking as a taxpayer. So I pay taxes on 3 houses, and let me go back to one thing. I grew up in that area. Lynch School, before it was a school, was Kraft's Tavern. There's always been businesses there. Goro's Gas Station, Cray's Package Store. There was Best Eaton and before that. So that's not like we're taking a residential area. That's always been a commercial area. And if you drive Route 5 from Long Island Sound to Vermont, you see commercial more so than residential. And the other thing I want to say is that school's been sitting there for how long now? 9 years, empty? Nothing's been done with it. It's been sitting there. And it's certainly not, I mean, it's great if everyone thinks you can use it for something, but I haven't seen a study saying it's fiscally responsible to do that. I haven't seen a study saying that the school department offices can go there, that this can be done and that's been done. It's just been sitting there gathering moss, for lack of a better word. So it's not like and the other thing I want to say is this was marketed. My clients were the only ones who bid. They are the only ones who came for the RFP. Nobody else. Unless I've been told wrong and I've talked to the planning department, this sat here and nobody bid. I don't know why. I don't know what prompted my clients to do it. I'm happy that they did, because at least there's something going on with the Lynch School instead of sitting there like a dilapidated building, like it's could become or would become. I mean, we have those buildings. We have the Armory. We have all buildings that sit there. And now we have somebody coming to develop it. And maybe the tax money that my clients are going to pour into the city and the tax money coming from businesses, big box businesses, which, by the way, I will say again is my opinion, traffic and taxes being paid really aren't bad. But the money coming in, maybe we'll be able to build gyms and things. We're a very poor city. If we had money, maybe we could do these things. Now I'm going to introduce John Furman from VBFB, who is one of the planning engineers of the project.
I think we should allow, there's another resident who wants to speak.
I'm sorry?
There,
Yes, I just want to let him finish the presentation part, and this isn't the end.
All right. Why don't
You
why
will,
don't-
absolutely.
Ms.
Don't worry.
We would be willing to let her speak now and then come do it afterward, do our presentation afterwards, if
Okay,
that's okay
sure.
with everybody?
It's fine with me, but I didn't want her to think she wouldn't have a chance. Yeah.
Turn the mic back on. No, it's not.
Hello? Okay. So I'm here, first of all, thank you for the people who talk for the school.
And your name and address, please?
My name is Paula Ferrario. I'm at 25 Morgan Street. I'm a resident of Ward 7. And I want to thank the people who talk and made the argument for the school. So I don't have to make that argument again. And I think I would be perfectly happy if the place stays a school. Actually, as a taxpayer, a Holyoke enthusiast, I'm actually here because I have this other scenario in my mind. And the way I look at this deal is basically $750,000 will be paid for this property. Once the zoning is changed to HB, Frontier Development can put whatever they want on it. The best scenario we have is a CVS and some, I don't want to, junk food comes to my mind, but I can't use a word, so fast food place. And, you know, in my mind, I think we can do better. Maybe it's not yet time to change the zoning. And I've been dreaming a lot about this. I understand that there might be more traffic, but I will take more traffic for a Whole Food. I will trade more traffic for Hackings, although I understand they're going to South Hadley, and we're not gonna get them. I will take more traffic for Trader Joe. And the reason for, I did a little math, I work in Work 7. Studies show that if we get one of those business, the property value will increase 15%. We take 30 houses in Ward 7 at 200,000. That's already $600,000 in value. That raises property value. Take 20 houses on Riverview at 300,000 each. It's another 600,000. So just very, very conservative estimate. Just in Ward 7, we're gonna get a house value raising of $1.2 million. And we will pay more taxes. We'll be glad to pay more taxes because we have the Whole Food or we have the Trader Joe. And so it's richness to the city. The other thing is the property has been empty for 9 years, but I've been living here 10, and today this city is something very different from what it was 9 years ago. And it's incredible. It's a rich city. I own 2 houses here, and I can't buy a third one because as soon as there's a good house on the market, it gets snatched. The prices are still very low. So partially, I'm saying, I don't think anybody is gonna accuse you not to be favorable to business if we all done on this deal. I think I have a strong belief that we can do better. I'm on the Historical Commission. I've been on the premises of Lynch a lot, and it's a very well-preserved building. So I think we can have a little more time to think about this. And I think that's all, and thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Mr. Furman?
Good evening. I'm John Furman, Managing Director for VHB in Springfield. And the last time we presented, we had some graphics that we were set up over there.
That's
I-
fine.
Is
If
that
you-
okay?
If you'd like to come over here, that's
Wherever
fine.
you guys want. It's,
No, it's fine.
Sure, that would be good. Do you want to come over, do you want to come around? Yeah. The green light, you're good with the green light.
so good evening. My portion of the presentation tonight will be very brief, but just as a reminder, why we were asked to continue this meeting to do a little bit more of an in-depth review on traffic. If you recall, the numbers that I presented at the last meeting were numbers strictly out of the ITE manual, because those are the numbers that you as a city will expect to see when this development goes through MEPA. So we didn't want to have two different sets of numbers here. I have Juliet Locke with me tonight. Juliet is my transportation engineer from VHB. She's also a professional traffic operations engineer. And what she's going to do is basically run through a comparison of trip numbers that actually will be more close to what you would expect for traffic here. She'll also run through the meetings that we've had, various meetings with the state and the local municipality since our last meeting, to give you a flavor of where this is going in traffic mitigation. So I'm going to just relinquish the mic to Juliet, ask her to come up here, but I just wanted, as a reminder, just kind of set that stage for why we're back here. Okay?
Thank you.
Is that the opinion from the planning board? Do you have the opinion from the planning board?
Somewhere I can.
I dug it out of my. I just wanted to read the details. Good evening. Okay. My name is Juliet Locke. I'm with Vanessa Hangen-Bruslin at 1 Federal Street in Springfield, Massachusetts. As John said, I'm a registered professional engineer and professional traffic operations engineer in the state of Massachusetts. I know you're familiar with the site, but I wanted to start quickly with this graphic to look at the driveway operations. Route 141, which is East Hampton Road, is a one-way street in the eastbound direction. This will be an enter turning left into the site, and an exit turning left out of the site is what is proposed at this driveway. A full access is proposed along Route 5, and a full access is proposed along Anniversary Road. And I apologize, as I know this will be difficult for some people to read, and you don't have to read all the numbers. I'm going to explain them. As John stated, there might have been some confusion with numbers that were submitted or seen previously that are expected to be generated by the project site. We have not conducted a full traffic study yet, but what we have done is collect a lot of existing data, including the traffic counts, which are the turning movement counts during the peak hours of the roadway, which is the AM peak hour, the PM peak hour, which are typical for commuter type developments. We also collected roadway counts along Route 141 and Route 5 in Holyoke. I'm going to start with the top table. The top table shows where there might have been a little bit of confusion last time. This is the trip generation estimates table. We use the Institute of Transportation Engineers. It's a nationally recognized book within our industry that is used to estimate traffic that will be generated by various uses. The trip generation manual, you can generate traffic for schools, for example, for offices, for pharmacies, for anything from military bases to gas stations, anything you can imagine. It's a huge database, and they collect the data all over the country, and it gives a great representation of how a site will generate traffic. For the purpose of the site that is currently proposed, there is a pharmacy/drugstore, which is in this first column, and a fast food restaurant in the second column. Across the rows, there is a weekday daily. So this is what you would be expected to see: number of vehicles entering the site. This is total. So entering would be half, approximately 708, and then the same 708 would leave the site throughout an entire day. Same for a fast food. We then have weekday evening peak hour, entering, exiting in total. Saturday midday peak hour, entering, exit in total. The peak hours are what is really examined when you conduct a full traffic study. Those are going to tell you the levels of service. That is how your roadways are operating, how your intersections are operating. It gives the city and all reviewing authority a great base for what is happening on these roadways today when you conduct the traffic counts, and then you project those counts into the future, and you can estimate how those intersections will operate in the future. On top of that, we can then add this traffic that is proposed by the site. So you will then have a base for how the intersections will operate once this site is fully developed. They're given, it's like a report card, levels of service A through F, A being the best, F being the intersection clearly needs improvement. So across the top, we have a total trips estimated by the site of 3,400 throughout the day. That's 1,700 entering and 1,700 trips exiting. That's over the entire 24-hour period of a typical weekday. What John thought may have been confused last time is there's this fourth column called pass-by trips. And I'm going to take a minute to explain what a pass-by trip is. Pass-by trips don't always exist for each type of site use. For example, a school or an office complex, people are not going to be driving by a school and say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to swing into this school and see what's going on here. That just doesn't happen. But for sites like a Dunkin' Donuts, for example, or a gas station, these are people that are already on the roadway today. They are there today. They are going from their house to work. They are going from their house to the grocery store. And they decide, you know what, I'm on my way to the grocery store, I need gas, I could use a coffee. And they just swing into the site as they're driving by. So that is not a new trip that is being added to the roadway. So for certain uses, you get to take a pass-by credit. For the uses we have proposed on this site, a pharmacy or drugstore and a fast food restaurant, those are considered pass-by uses. A lot of people will stop by the fast food restaurant to get a coffee, to grab dinner for their family when they're on their way home. For the pharmacy, people are going to swing in to grab that birthday card they forgot to get or to pick up their son or daughter's medication on their way home. So Mass DOT, that's throughout the state of Massachusetts, they allow a 25% pass-by reduction regardless of what the site is, which assumes that approximately 25% of the people accessing the site will be vehicles already on the roadway, which leaves the net new trips, which is 3,400 minus 850. That's our net new trips. So these are the new vehicles that we are proposing will get added to the roadways on a typical weekday. So while this number seems high, these are the number of vehicles that will be in the site, but these are the new vehicles that are being added to your roadways. There's a significant portion of vehicles that are already on the roadway today. And that 25% that I spoke of, that has been used since I've been in the business and in the industry. Recently, and I'm speaking within the past 6 months, Mass DOT has recognized that there are a significant number of uses that get a lot more than 25% pass-by traffic. Dunkin' Donuts and fueling facilities are two of the highest. Same with fast food restaurants and a pharmacy/drugstore. These type of uses can see up to 50% of their traffic being purely pass-by. And this is based on all the ITE, which is the Institute of Transportation Engineers. These are the studies that have been done throughout the years. So 25% is very conservative. We only deduct 25% from the weekday daily because that's what the state currently allows. During the PM peak hour, the state is starting to say, you know what? We're over-designing a lot of intersections in this state. And it's because we're not taking into account the fact that most of these sites have a significant number of pass-by traffic. So during the PM peak hour, they're allowing us now to use that 50% pass-by credit to show a more honest reflection of what's going to happen on these roadways. So when John explained that MEPA likes to look at the total trips before the reductions occur, it's because MEPA needs to know vehicle emissions and everything that's going to happen on the site. So these are the numbers that MEPA uses. These are the numbers that will get incorporated to our traffic study, that will get used through the Mass DOT permitting process. These are the numbers that are being added to your roadways. I hope I didn't confuse anyone. I apologize. I can be wordy sometimes. Moving down to the next table, this is a trip distribution summary. And this explains that while we have during the peak hour 75 vehicles that are going to be coming towards the site and entering the site, which you think about 75 vehicles over an hour is just over one vehicle. No, I'm sorry, 145 are going to be entering the site. These are the numbers that are added to your roadway. So we're going to get 145 vehicles entering the site during the PM peak hour, which is just over 2 vehicles every minute. About 130 vehicles are going to be exiting the site. Again, just over 2 vehicles every minute during your peak hour. This trip distribution summary tells us where they're coming from. Not all of these trips are going to be coming north along Route 5 and trying to make a left turn into your site. This trip distribution summary is based on the existing travel patterns that are seen on the roadway network today. And these are based on the traffic counts that we just conducted in April of 2016. So based on our estimates, Northampton Street from the north, which means if you're entering towards the site, they will be driving south on Route 5, Northampton Street. About 15% of that traffic will come from the north. From the south on Route 5, they're coming from the south, so they're going north to access the site, about 25%. East Hampton Road, which is Route 141 and Interstate 91, will be coming from the west. Approximately 50% of the site traffic is anticipated to come from that way. It's important to note that because this is a one-way road, when this 50% leaves the site, they will need to first travel north on Route 5 and then turn left at the intersection of Hamden Street and Route 5 to get back onto that one-way road that accesses Interstate 91 and goes back over the mountain on Route 141. Hamden Street, Dwight Street, this is to and from the east. We're expecting approximately 10%. This adds up to 100% of all the site traffic. And this is how, when we're evaluating the intersections, we use these percentages to split this traffic through our network. We add it on top of the existing traffic volumes today, and when we pump it through the analysis software that we use, it spits out that report, a level of service B, a level of service C, and it tells us how the intersection is operating and how much delay is experienced by each driver and whether the level of service has decreased or if it has remained the same. This last table I wanted to prepare to show that I think John said there was a concern at one of the previous meetings that, well, Route 5 currently carries 14,000 trips on a given day, and that's some are northbound, some are southbound. This is total. That road can't possibly accommodate almost 3,500 more trips. So the point that I want to make is that it's not seeing an increase of 3,400. The site in general, we're only increasing the roadway by 2,500, but all of those trips are not being added to Route 5. Half of them alone are being added to Route 141 entering the site. So it's a significant, it's huge oversight to say that 3,400 trips are being added to Route 5, because that's just not true. We need to look at the percentages, how much traffic is going to be increased on each roadway. So that's what I tried to show here. Under the existing conditions, these are the counts that we currently conducted, which correspond with previous counts that were done by the DOT. And so Route 141 on East Hampton Road, this is one way, 11,000 vehicles on an average weekday. And Route 5, Northampton Street, approximately 14,000 vehicles on an average weekday. These are the peak hour volumes, 1,000 on 141 and 1,250 on Route 5. The highest peak hour was the afternoon peak hour. I believe it occurred from 4:30 to 5:30. So that corresponds with a typical commuter pattern, people on their way home from work in the evening. The future increase I show is how many vehicles during the day are going to be added to each roadway. So we're seeing about a 640 car increase, and this is due to the proposed development. So over the course of a day, 640 vehicles will be added to Route 141, which is approximately a 6% increase. During the peak hour, we're going to be adding 35 to this 1,000, so it's approximately a 3.5% increase. And again, for Route 5, we're looking at adding 750, which is less than 1,000, which is significantly less than the over 3,000 that some people thought was going to happen. 750 to the existing 14,000, which is a 5% increase. Peak hour is 40, which corresponds to a 3% increase. So I just wanted to point out that the increases you're going to be seeing along the roadways are fairly, I don't want to say insignificant, it's not insignificant, but it's minor compared to other types of developments that could happen. I'm sorry for the lengthy tables, but I do now want to speak just for a moment about some meetings that we had, as John Furman stated. We have met with City of Holyoke representatives, and we met with them separately first, and then we have met with the Department of Transportation District 2 office. What we had was called a scoping meeting as part of their standard operation procedures for obtaining an access permit. Before you even get the traffic study started, they want to have a meeting that says, what are you proposing? What intersections are you looking at? What are the existing problems today? They want to get that all out on the table. And it helps us through this process too, because we know what their concerns are. We know what to expect as we move through. For example, we told them that the intersections we were going to analyze were the intersections of Route 141 at Route 5, as well as the intersection with Anniversary Road and Route 5 and Hampden Street and Route 5. And they told us, you know what, we also want you to go and count the intersection, and it's not quite an intersection, it's where I-91 merges with 141. So there's a little bit of merge happening there. So they said, you know, we want you to add that to your scope. And that's why we have these meetings, so we can talk about it, work together, and see what's best for all interested parties. So at this meeting, they agreed with our methodology. They agreed with the pass-by trip reduction we were proposing, as that, you know, we have to follow their guidelines. So this is allowable by their guidelines. What is also allowable by their guidelines is something that's called a shared use trip reduction. And we did not include that here, as you can see, because we did want to remain conservative. A shared use reduction is sometimes it's only about 5% of trips, so it wouldn't have deducted that many more trips. But if you have a large development site that has, you know, if it's a hotel and a restaurant and, you know, maybe some retail, you'll see interaction between those three. So you have one vehicle turn in that might access more than one use on that site. So same for this site. Is it possible that someone's going to be going to get dinner at the fast food restaurant and says, you know what, I'm going to swing over to the pharmacy and get my prescription while I'm here? It happens. So then you can take a small deduction for those people. We didn't do that in this case. The DOT agreed that this provides a conservative analysis. I know that there was, I think it was stated at the last meeting, there was concern on getting traffic in and out of the site. I explained to you the 3 access points that we had proposed. What's nice about those access points is it disperses the proposed traffic to 3 different driveways. So you're not having everybody trying to come in and out of one driveway. We made some initial observations at the intersection of Route 5 and Route 141 and how that intersection is currently operating today. And there is a significant number of gaps along Route 5 that intersection actually accommodates. If you look in the southbound direction, they provide a lead green phase for the left turn that's going southbound and trying to get onto 141 eastbound, which is Dwight Street. So it clears a lot of traffic. Vehicles are going to be able to enter that proposed site driveway without a significant amount of delay. The DOT and the City of Holyoke representatives agreed with us. Moving forward, we are going to analyze those driveways in full before we proceed. All of the traffic data that we obtain, the analyses will have to be reviewed by not only MIPA, but by the DOT and by the City of Holyoke in order to get all of the permits that we need for this site. One thing that the city, they told us their existing concerns, and so did the DOT. And that's one thing that we wanted to talk about here is there are some concerns that exist out there. We're not saying that these roadways are perfect. A couple of the concerns the DOT had was the condition of Anniversary Road. It's certainly right now not equipped to handle a significant amount of traffic. There's potholes, there's no clear roadway or lane delineation or edge of road delineation. It's a road that's going to need to be improved before it can handle any additional traffic. The city also had a concern for the existing intersection of Route 5 and Route 141. Currently, that intersection has no vehicle detection, which means it's operating completely pre-timed. So for example, the eastbound approach might get 45 seconds of green time, even if there's nobody there. It's just green time that's being wasted on traffic that's not coming. And there might be someone on Route 5 just sitting there waiting, where if you had an intersection that had vehicle detection, what that does is it places a call to the intersection controller saying, hey, service the northbound approach, or there's a vehicle waiting on the eastbound approach, let's switch phases here. So the intersection is old, the equipment is old, the DOT and the city both stated that. So as we move forward, part of this project would be to identify the existing deficiencies, any deficiencies that might be caused by the project traffic, and then we would have to develop a plan to mitigate those deficiencies. And that is something that we've begun conversations with the city, begun conversations with the DOT to make sure that everyone, in order to get those approvals, they're gonna want the traffic to flow safer than it's flowing today, if that makes sense. So one of the other things, I don't know if you can picture this section of roadway, and I might wanna flip, actually let me flip to this one. This is the site, upside down. This is north. It wasn't supposed to be that way, and I could take the time to flip it, but it might, okay, thank you. It was supposed to be oriented the other way. So this is Route 5 northbound. This is the intersection I was just referring to that does not have any vehicle detection today. This section of Route 5, between these two signalized intersections, there are currently no shoulders provided. There's 2 lanes of travel in each direction. There is a sidewalk, which is nice, but a lot of the buildings butt right up to the edge of the sidewalk. So there's not a lot of room for widening throughout this corridor. In fact, there's no room for widening throughout this corridor. But this section of Route 5, which is actually to the south of the intersection, if you think of that intersection, you have very, very wide shoulders. It provides on-street parking. It provides a bike lane, and it only provides 1 lane of travel in each direction, not the 2 that you see down here. This section of roadway has been updated much more recently than anything's been done with this small section of Route 5. To the north, there's also 1 lane of travel in each direction and very wide shoulders. One of the, I want to say recent, it's not super recent with the Mass DOT, but over the past year, there has been a huge drive for state roadways and any projects that come in, they want a minimum of a 5-foot shoulder. And that accommodates a bike lane, so it could be a shoulder/bike lane. There's a huge push for bike lanes and sidewalks with the DOT. It's very important to them. So, and the same with the city of Holyoke. They like to see continuity. So where there's bike lanes to the north and bike lanes to the south, there's this section of Route 5 that provides no bike lanes. So one of the things that the city actually recommended, I believe it was the city traffic engineer, or just the city engineer, I apologize, recommended what we consider in the industry like a classic road diet. And I know that sounds silly, but that's the technical term, is a road diet, where there's no reason to have 4 lanes of travel in this section of roadway. The more lanes you have, people view it as a highway. I can drive faster, I can pass people. And all it does is make the roadway less safe for other users, for your pedestrians, for your bicyclists. A traditional road diet looks at the traffic volumes on a roadway and says, do we need all these lanes? Is this roadway completely over-designed? And the answer here is yes. And we've talked to the DOT about it. So a classic road diet would be 1 lane of travel in each direction, some wide shoulders. People can pull off if there's an accident. It can accommodate the bicyclists, more continuity along the corridor. One other thing that the city asked we look into if this moves forward is a 2-way left turn lane. If you know what that is, there's none currently in the city of Holyoke. There is one in Southwick on Route 10. And what it is it's a center lane. So there would be a northbound travel lane, a southbound travel lane, and a single lane in the middle, which would allow left turn movements from each direction. And it's highly marked with traffic markings, with signs. It's very accepted by the DOT. And initially they thought that this might be a good application for that type of lane. So, you know, as we move this project forward, we would be looking at your typical mitigation. We're not just going to put in this development and say, hey, good luck with the traffic signals in the roadway. We're going to mitigate what's out there. We're going to look at what's available. Another thing I want to point out that it was requested of me to say is the previous school that was there, while it hasn't been operating for a while, you can tell just by looking at this aerial that there's insufficient parking. There's almost no bus drop-off spaces. Where is a bus going to circulate this site and drop off students? And I don't even want to pretend to know what caused the school to close down. But I can tell you that if it were to remain a school, those would be some huge issues that exist today that they would have to try to deal with. I did look at, based on the square footage of this building, what would the school generate for traffic if it was operating today? Well, a lot of people say, well, you know, this CVS, this fast food, it's gonna add so much traffic to the roadways. Well, the truth is a school would too. A school generates a lot of traffic during the peak hours. And not only does it generate a lot of traffic, but it generates a lot of chaotic traffic. It generates buses, large vehicles that now need to maneuver in and out of the site, drop off students. It generates a lot of foot traffic. I'm pretty sure that's why this old mid-block crossing is there, was probably for the school. So that creates a lot of backup along a corridor if you're generating a lot of pedestrian traffic. A lot of parents, there's been a trend in the transportation industry where parents don't want their kids to take the school bus anymore as much as they used to. Parents want to be able to drive and drop off their kids and pick up their kids. And what you see at a lot of schools is parents just saying, you know what, I can't get into the school. I'm gonna pull over right here. Kid, get out, walk the rest of the way. It creates a lot of unknown vehicle movements. So I did want to say that. During the peak hours, comparably, a school would generate about the same amount of traffic as what we're proposing, as well as would an office building. If it were going to be turned into an office building, if the structure was to remain a structure of this size, would generate a lot of trips as an office building. So I just wanted to say that. I feel like I talk a lot. I apologize. VHB has been doing a lot of work in the city of Holyoke for many years, and we have done a great job of working with the city and with the state DOT to make sure everybody's interests are heard. My job is not always easiest as the traffic engineer. Nobody likes me because no one wants to see an increase in traffic, but I can only tell you what the numbers show. I can't make stuff up. So that's what the numbers are. As we move forward, we will have a more in-depth traffic study. There's a huge process in the state to make sure the traffic gets reviewed from all angles within the MEPA process, within the state DOT process, and your City of Holyoke department heads are very familiar with VHB and with traffic studies in general. So I will take any questions that anyone has. I don't know if anyone else on my team wanted to speak right now. Okay, but I hope that helps clear up a little bit of the traffic confusion.
Yes, and thank you for a very thorough explanation. I think that you really have addressed a lot of the questions that were raised by members. So are there members of the committee at the moment that have any questions or comments? Counselor Jourdain? If you want to grab a chair, you're welcome to.
Sit down if you like. Yeah, sure. Yeah, make yourself comfortable.
It's up to you. Whatever is good for you.
Fast food strikes me as one that would generate a lot of traffic, and I think your numbers bear that out to the tune of something like 2,000 a day. Do we know how much traffic, is there any comparables done like the other McDonald's down the other end of the street? How much traffic that generates on Northampton Street now? I mean, this is very comparable. There's no sense really, do we need to do hypotheticals when we have real live examples? I'd be just kind of curious to see that, but I suppose there is industry, as opposed to, you stated, an office building would generate as much traffic. I think of an office building as people come in the morning and then they leave at night. It doesn't seem like there would be as much. It's just strictly the people that work there. Perhaps other forms of retail, like the plaza type, that might potentially that would be somewhere in between probably a drive-through type fast food restaurant as opposed to retail shops where you come in, there's no drive-through or something of that nature. So
I can start answering those. I guess
Juliet, could I interrupt for a minute? Councilman, just on the McDonald's comparison.
yeah,
We don't actually know what that's going to be yet. So your comment is valid that there is empirical data you can get from another use, but kind of saying McDonald's is going to come here, it's premature. We don't know what it is.
well,
It could
fast
be-
food is, whether it's Taco Bell, Burger King, they're all of the same genre, aren't they?
We picked fast food because it was the most intensive use we could throw on there. It could be a Trader Joe's. It could be anything. There is no set program for that. The only thing that we know right now is that it is a CVS.
So we just give you carte blanche and hope for the best?
The McDonald's type of use is the worst that it would get. So we can't get any worse than that. So if it comes back in that it's a traffic perspective, not diet, just clarify. So if we came back in with a supermarket, though, when I saw the laugh, I knew where it was. The drive-through adds a lot, but any other use that we put there would generate less traffic than what that is. So because this has no assigned lease to that portion of the property, we tried to get as conservative. As Juliet said, our analysis is conservative, and then we have a fixed use with a use that is projected to generate the most traffic. We tried to get as much as we could here to show what the worst condition would be. Okay. And that's what we'd mitigate for.
So let's, okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, before Juliet was ready
point
to go
taken,
off on that.
so,
Yeah.
And I guess
comparing the McDonald's to an office building, let's take it.
And sure, to add on to that a little bit, what John is saying is, a lot of time, fast food restaurants, you could go to a number of them and they generate different amounts of traffic. And that is typically because it's driven by the location. And that's why a lot of these developers will look at the adjacent roadway traffic. How much traffic is my site gonna get by it? And that's where my pass-by numbers come into account. And that's where it really makes sense that, you know, these types of uses generate a lot of pass-by traffic. So a McDonald's down the street, even if this were going to be a McDonald's, it might generate completely different amount of traffic. So what you're seeing here, the Institute of Transportation Engineers looks at a number of, and I mean hundreds of sites throughout the country to create this data. So this is a very conservative data. And yeah, a McDonald's that's located on a street with only 1,000 trips per day is gonna generate a lot less traffic than a McDonald's that's located on a street that carries 10,000 trips per day. So I think that answers that, but as far as any of the other uses go, what we're doing here, when we get permitted, if we get permitted through MEPA, they will approve the site at the 3,400 vehicles per day. If we want to put, if that's what gets approved, a fast food restaurant and a pharmacy drugstore, we've seen it over the course of the past few years, because of the market and the economy fell. We had a lot of sites that were approved, and then people started pulling out. For, you know, like a Stop and Shop might say, you know what? Turns out it's a bad time for us. We can't do this anymore, even though the project got so far through a permitting stage. So what we've seen happen is, you know, we can't guarantee that CVS isn't gonna pull out tomorrow. But if we happen to get our permitting before that happens, we will be approved for that 3,400 trips. If we want to change use from the pharmacy drugstore to anything else, to a Trader Joe's, to a retail component, we will have to go back to MEPA and back to the state and say, this is what's being proposed now due to unforeseen circumstances. And we will have to redo this table. This is the amount of traffic that this site is going to generate. Typically, if it generates less than that 3,400, they will make sure that it's nothing out of the ordinary, and they will say, okay, that's fine, proceed, but you still have to do all the mitigation that was proposed to improve the roadways and intersections. If it's anything more than that 3,400, a lot of times you're gonna have to start the process over. So if anything changes halfway through, you're not gonna sneak under the radar and say, oh, guess what, now we're putting in 2 gas stations and 2 fast food restaurants. It just can't happen. If anything changes, the state will need to be notified.
All set.
Thank you.
Counselor Lisi?
I have more of a comment than a question at this point. This body did pass a complete streets ordinance last year, so we would have the expectation that whatever project comes through, there is going to be a lot of traffic mitigation happening on the Route 5 corridor in this case, but anywhere in the city that new development is happening, we do have a complete streets ordinance, which would expect that traffic diets are completed and the roadways and pedestrian access ways and bike paths are made accessible to all different types of modes of transportation.
Absolutely, and I like it when municipalities have those in place. It makes it, you know, easier to work together, and that's why we have these initial meetings with the city as well. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Counselor McGivern?
Thank you, Counselor Bacon, and Juliet, thank you. First, the presentation in the easel and the information on the board, will you be leaving that with the committee?
We can leave that with you, yes.
Yeah, our open meeting law requires that anything that's used, we have to have a copy of it. And I do appreciate the numbers and the explanation of the numbers. It brings us, I think, into the questions I had at the last hearing night. And that's part of what you discussed this evening, and that's the left turn issue. And combine that with what I call through traffic. It was interesting because on the news starting last night going through today, the big thing in Brimfield is to reduce Route 20 to 1 lane both ways. That scared the hell out of me, and what you just said scares the hell out of me, because we know our traffic. We know our through traffic of people who live in this city. We know where they're going, why they're going, and Northampton Route 5 is a residential thoroughfare of getting people back and forth from their homes to all the things that they want and need to do Saturday morning, during the day, work week, so on. How do you account for the numbers of getting
some of the left-hand turn handled or mitigating on and off the property. But there's businesses on both sides of the street here. You know, George Murphy is sitting behind you, owns Reardon's Garage. There's the hotel, the Chinese, the bank. There's the gas station across the street, you know, the Rite Aid complex. And there's a constant, you know, in and out use of all those properties. Battled with people trying to get through and continue north on Route 5. People coming through the city who don't want to use 91, use Route 5 to go north and south. How do you handle not backing up all that traffic when you take, I heard you say, but I didn't hear your percentage or number, coming off of 141 to come into the complex are going to go back to 141 because it's obviously one way going back up towards East Hampton. How are you going to get them back out while all this is happening?
Sure. No, thank you very much. And I know that the term road diet can sound scary to some people. And how do you take a roadway and make it smaller than what it is today? So it's a completely normal concern. And I think what you reiterated about the number of businesses along this corridor is, again, what the city engineer expressed and why he recommended a two-way left turn lane, because now it gives a safe refuge for people who are making those movements to pull into this lane but not back up the through movement vehicles. And it actually, even though we have the through movements only in one lane now, it makes it safer because they're not having to stop to wait for people to turn left. What you would see with a two-way left turn lane implementation is ease of access to all businesses up and down the corridor. They have a safe place to wait. They would not slow down the Route 5 mainline traffic going up. And at the intersections themselves, it would still open up to like an exclusive left turn lane if you're trying to get northbound. An exclusive left turn lane would still exist to turn left at the intersection. And it creates less conflict for vehicles who are merging, where the lane is only one lane in each direction to the south and one lane in each direction to the north. It provides more continuity. There's definitely more traffic along this section of Route 5 because of where Route 141 comes off. But during the peak hours and the traffic volume data that we collected, it's not necessary to have traffic. I know it's hard to see, okay, you're narrowing it, how is it going to make it safe? But it does. It slows vehicles down. It gets the turning movements into the two-way left turn lane, so they're not impeding the through movement traffic by north and south. And at this time, there's not too much more I can say about it, but when we do the actual study, we will have some real information that will grade the intersections. It will talk about how safety will be improved along the corridor. And as
Councilor Lacey.
Councilor Lacey stated with the Complete Streets program, it's really going to incorporate a lot more safety elements for other users of the roadway besides vehicles, including bicycles. And that's what a Complete Streets plan is all about. And that's really where this state and a lot of municipalities are headed. You know, it's not all about the passenger vehicle anymore. The state found that a lot of intersections along roadways were just simply being right. And now there's not a lot of right of way left to accommodate bicycles and accommodate pedestrians, and those are the DOT really wants to promote. They want to provide a safe environment. So it's all about finding a compromise where it might slow down the average vehicle by 10 seconds, for example, on Route 5. You're accommodating a lot of other users.
The unique part in the overview map shows this is you talked a lot about 141 East Hampton Road going west. 141 East is coming down to what we call into Dwight Street. And it's probably less than 1/8 of a mile between both intersections, Both currently have left-hand exclusive, well, they have left-hand turn lanes. They're not exclusive, which I think turning left on Dwight Street is exclusive. Turning left on East Hampton Road currently is a yield to Route
That's
5
correct.
traffic coming
Well,
south.
you can't,
Well, when when you're going north on Route 5 and you want to take a left back onto East Mountain Road, back onto 141, yeah, it's a left-hand turn, but only with a green light yield. It's not exclusive left-hand turn. The backup there goes to the Chinese restaurant during peak hours. The backup going south on Route 5 in the left-hand turn comes back in front of Reardon's garage
okay,
during peak hours. So if you're queuing, because each of those intersections are long queues because of the amount of traffic, especially returning on East Hampton Road, going west towards East Hampton itself. Those queues are incredible because the amount of traffic that goes through those intersections. And those backups are going to make it very difficult for that middle lane. It works in New Hampshire. I've seen it work in other states, but to do it in this particular spot, I think it's going to take a lot of convincing. Do your numbers reflect the amount of time it takes all traffic to get through both of those intersections?
it will when the analysis is complete.
We're trying to develop a property. The CVS has nothing to do with this hearing. The fast food, other than the fact that it's a fast food, has little to do with this hearing. We've, off of a master plan, have, been looking at developing this property for many years. But we have to make sense when we develop a piece of property with traffic mitigation. And what I try to point out the last, this is a zone change, and that yes, site plan review will come down the road, and yes, MIPA will make you go through more hoops and over more hurdles. We understand that. But before you vote yes or no for a zone change, can you make it work?
And the answer to that right now is that there's no way NEPA or the DOT, this section of roadway is actually DOT jurisdiction, and they are very concerned with two lanes. Same with the city of Holyoke, they look at two lanes. They will not approve anything if not mitigate and show that the queue lanes, the levels of service are going to be mitigated, are going to be acceptable. Another thing that might be happening at the intersection of Route 5 and Hampton Street is it hasn't been retired in a long time. Maybe there's vehicle detection parking. I'm not even sure if there's vehicle detection at that intersection. It might be just as little as Route 5 at 141. It could be that the intersection needs upgrades, an exclusive left turn lane in the northbound direction. Just simply retiming the intersection could solve a lot of problems. I can't say that for sure right now, but I can guarantee that a project will get approved through the NEPA process if we're making conditions worse.
I'm sure you know, at both intersections, the equipment is old, and it's more than just timing. It's replacement. And currently, the state has a number of projects that they're working with us on. Unfortunately, both of them are not those projects. Other important projects, the Whiting Farms area, the mall area. But we have no crystal ball to know when help will come in the area of replacing that equipment, so we could upgrade it to something that's more modern and accommodate the traffic that we're talking about.
I agree, there's no crystal ball at this time. Having a developer help move things forward. A couple of these intersections are eligible for state funding. Boundaries that could be explored in the future.
Have you given the developer any hint as to what it might cost them to mitigate?
I haven't gotten into a full depth cost analysis yet.
Councilman, can I address the last point that you just made as well? As a developer, going through the MIPA process, once a traffic study is done and we have a set of mitigation that is planned for this, that agreement is solidified in Section 61 finding. It's prepared by the DOT, and what it does is it outlines every step that this developer must do in order to get approval. So to your point, if we go through this process and then that process says that these intersections have to be upgraded, that Section 61 assigns responsibility to it. And that is the outcome of the MIPA process.
And I appreciate that. And I think at the last hearing, you know, not everybody agreed with me, but before we change the zone, which is contributing to the cause of what we're talking about here, I think we need to know there's a commitment there and a way to do it. And that's the point. We've taken bigger steps forward this evening, I believe, in what your presentation has helped us clearly see what we're going to be facing. And now I just want to make sure, once we're there, we can handle it
Yep.
together. But
I think it's safe to say the state has your back, put it that way. Maybe not in all cases, but on a traffic-related piece, they do.
no, we just went through a great meeting in DGR, one of our other committees with the state, and there are some great projects that they have our back on. Just don't walk on the bridge down here on Lyman Street over the canal, okay? Because sometimes it takes a while for them to catch up to our back, but that's okay. Thank you.
I'll say. Counselor Greenie?
Yeah, just quickly, I won't say too much more, but the additional problem is the traffic backup that's going to take place from the south side of the traffic light at Dwight and Northampton, going past the Dunkin' Donuts, because at that time during peak hour, there's generally a backup that sometimes goes back as far as the mobile gas station. So that's going to add to the situation or add to the problem. These people are going to be delayed. They have no place to go. It's just going to be a bottleneck. So I'm concerned about that factor too. Mentioning also what Councilor McGivern said about the traffic coming north on 141 or on Hamden Street going up. And these access roads that are going to go into the property coming south is going to create a situation where this traffic going north is also going to be delayed for people turning into the property, which creates another situation. And I'm purely not, you know, I see your data and I understand what you're saying, but I ride that route every day, and I see what goes on that route every day, day after day after day, and it's a serious problem, and it has to be addressed. That, of course, doesn't really have much to say what I had to say before about the use of the property.
No, I appreciate the comment. I wish I could tell you all that there's a magical development that would generate tax dollars for the city and not generate any traffic. That's not the case, unfortunately. I guess speaking to that section of Route 5 as you come northbound, my numbers estimate that approximately 25% of the site traffic will come from the south. 25% of the site traffic during the PM peak hour is approximately 15 to 20 vehicles entering the site from the south during the peak hour, which is approximately one vehicle every 3 minutes, in addition to what's out there today. The site, because of the pass-by nature, isn't going to add a significant amount of traffic to the roadways as they are today. But what the improvements can do at the intersections might really help the deficiencies that you're seeing out there today. There's no denying that the intersections need to be upgraded. And I think if that were to happen, then that would significantly outweigh the increase in traffic that will be seen because of this development. But I do appreciate the comment. I know that there's a lot of developments out there today that probably cause peak hour congestion trying to get in and out of their sites.
Counselor Lisi?
Thank you. I don't have any other questions for VHB. So if somebody else has a question for VHB in particular, I'm happy to hold off. No? All right. So I just wanted to see if, Kara, can you confirm that the bid went out in, was it 2012 or 2013? Does Frontier know? Are you? Well, the bid went out, or what the bid was,
it was March 19th, 2014.
That it was accepted or that it went out?
No, the RFP went out March 19th, 2014. They submitted their response May 5th, 2014. It was accepted by the mayor and approved by the city council on July 8th, 2014.
So despite the building being vacant for a number of years, there was a process by which the city first took it from the schools, right? And then there was another period of time before which we actually put the RFP out and started soliciting bids for the property.
Right, and just to clarify, I mean, we didn't take it from the schools. They voted, right, they voted to say it was no longer necessary for a school, which transferred it back to the city.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I wanted to note, there's been a number of other suggestions for uses other than schools, such as Trader Joe's or Whole Foods. And these are all commercial uses that would need the same zoning, correct? I mean, I don't have the map in front of me, but as far as I can recall, I think that they would need a similar type of zoning to even pop up on that parcel.
Right, I think you're correct. It's zoned R1A, which is residential. And as I would say that, yes, most of the other commercial uses that have been discussed would need a zone change, and this is proposed to BH, and so they would be allowed.
Okay, so those are the only 2 points that I wanted to make clear in the public hearing portion of the meeting. Thank you. Counselor Graney?
Yeah, just quickly, I was on the school committee when the school committee turned that property over to the city. The vote was 5-3. There were 3 dissenting votes. 2 people were absent, and it was a very convenient vote, I must say, by the people who wanted to turn it over. But 2 people who would have voted against turning it over to the city were not there at that meeting. I was.
Thank you. Are there members of the public here who wish to speak in favor or against the zone change tonight? If you want to speak, you need to be at the microphone because we are televised. Thank you.
Already spoke earlier.
It's
But again, I oppose the zone change. I think that you really have to focus on quality of life issues. Holyoke, the landscape of Holyoke has changed significantly over the years, and in particular, Route 5. We're looking like we're Riverdale Street. In West Springfield, we're looking like we're Memorial Drive more and more in Chicopee. And there is a large number of people who live off of Route 5 who have invested their money, their tax-paying dollars to the city of Holyoke because they love the city, they want to continue to live here, and the more you commercialize this area of Holyoke, the more you're going to drive away homeowners and taxpayers. And we are the majority here in the city who are carrying the burden of the budget here in Holyoke. And I would argue that bringing in this big box company to the city of Holyoke is not going to create the revenue you want. We need to start thinking about alternatives. And I urge you to please don't do the zone change.
Thank you. Yes, if you've already spoken, if you could limit your comments to a minute, please.
Sure. I was also on the school committee with Howard Graney when we voted, and I voted not to turn it back over to the city because we have, it would be better used as a school. That's what it's for, and that's what it is. It has everything that a school needs. We're using Metcalf now as a dual language school. A lot of people are even coming in from out of district to use that school, and we could use a lot more space. And that school would be the perfect spot to expand the dual language program. There's a lot of talk about the CVS and whatever else is supposed to go in there, and there aren't many people in this city that want to see another drugstore go in that spot. We can really use that. I also heard people in the city council talk about Suffolk Street and what we're going to do. Well, we came back after the first time that the school was given to the city, and we came back a second time to try to get it back. with a plan that a lot of people on the city council talk about, saying, what are we going to do with the school department on Suffolk Street? And the plan that we had was to move the school department from Suffolk Street to where Metcalf is now, and then use Lynch School as Metcalf. I still think that that's a good plan. I think that we can use that now because the dual language program that we have at Metcalf and the expansion of Metcalf could really use that. And I'd rather see us use that school and talk about funding to renovate that and give that back to the schools. That's a much better use for that property than any business that you can put in that school.
Thank you.
I just want to be very clear. I might be confusing, but to me, my point is, for what is offered, for the kind of development that is offered, it's not worth to have a zone change. You know, at this point, what we have found out that we don't even know what is gonna come there. And it seems like there's a lot of work that has to be done on Northampton Street and more discomfort for the unknown. And I think it just would be really rash to do a zones change at this point.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else who wishes to speak, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay, under discussion relative to, is there a concern that there is further information that we have not yet obtained?
Well, I just want to be clear, so this closes it off, right? So there's nothing else that the council or developer or any members of the public wants. We didn't really hear from too many members of the public tonight, that's for sure. I got a couple emails, but this is I think we heard from 5 members of the public. So, this is a pretty big decision, Madam Chair, on this project and for this location. It's pretty much a geographic center of the city, and I've heard 5 people from the public. We've got a couple of counselors that we know their positions. I'm just wondering if we've done our due diligence. Now, and I'm just throwing out as a devil's advocate. I'm not, I'm not saying how I want to vote right now, but I'd like to hear from other counselors. If they think they've heard enough, then
Well, from my perspective, I think we've had a number of meetings. I think they've been spread out over a fairly long period of time. So the whole discussion has sort of lost some of its intensity because of those gaps in time in between one hearing and another. If there is a concern on the committee that we should keep it open to hear further from the public now that the information has been shared through this information that's been put out tonight, which is televised and people can view it on the website, that would be the only information that I believe we could gain by keeping the hearing open at this point, unless somebody has a further concern on a factual basis. Counselor Jourdain?
Yeah, can we entertain, do we need the public hearing open to get information about the lexicon of other uses that would be possible to us besides BH, and what those other varieties are? Because there's been sort of an intimation here moments ago about, like, anything that we would do would be a BH zone, which isn't necessarily the case. There is other possibilities with other uses besides BH that could be a good use for the property that would achieve, things that assist that advance the community there besides this proposed use. So I don't know. I suppose that's just a legal fact. That information, I suppose we could just acquire right from the ordinance book, but in making our decision. Then my second question was, once we close the public hearing, we have to make a decision within 90 days, I believe. Is that correct?
If we could suspend the rules,
Just to
I would
refresh my
defer
memory.
to our legal.
Yeah. she's gonna look into that, yeah.
But I think,
Oh.
if I may,
Counselor Lisi?
so to the point about the different zones, the applicant applied for the BH zone, so that's the only thing that we can consider.
Right.
And we also have a recommendation from the planning board that gives the recommendation for the BH zone. Now, we don't have to, approve their recommendation or agree with their recommendation, but the only thing that is before us is the BH zone. So even if there were other possibilities out there, it would also require the applicant to start a new application for a different zone. And
I totally agree with you. What my only point in bringing that up is to say, I may not be in favor of BH at this point based on the uses proposed and the current plan that has been presented. But my point is, I may be supportive of either BH or some other zone or some other use, or some other zone at a future time, based on whatever the next proposal is that may come to as well. So that's my only point. I have to weigh my decision based on the information that I have. I mean, I'm also happy to,
Right, and I think for purposes of this public hearing, our scope is narrow, because the scope is to look at the R1A zone and consider whether we want to change it to the BH zone. But if there is concern about having heard from the public, I mean, that is certainly gathering more information. My other question would be is if there's any concern that there's other factual information that anybody feels they've asked for that they haven't received. That's generally the reason we would keep the public hearing open, because our constituents can speak to us basically at any time.
if I can speak
But
there
if I
one
could defer, do you have an answer? 90 days? And in terms of, just for clarification, in terms of keeping the public hearing open, in my experience, it's generally been if there's remaining questions of fact that we need answers on. Would that be correct?
Any additional information. So, I think to Counselor Jordan's point, the other zones obviously are in the ordinance, so you could find that, but if there's any other information you anticipate receiving from anyone, then that would be a reason to leave the public hearing open. Otherwise, if it's closed, you have 90 days to then vote on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Lisi?
Thank you. And the last thing that I'd like to say is I know that it's very typical that we go through these public hearings for zone changes with a project before us, so we could look at some of the numbers regarding traffic, regarding the impact on the neighborhood, or the imagined impact on the neighborhood, depending on what type of business is coming in. But zoning is not supposed to be project specific. So the BH zone is, if you read the planning board's recommendation, they're saying that they're voting in favor of the zone change because it makes the area there on the map a continuous BH zone. All of the other parcels in that area have the BH zone. It would fit neatly in that area. We don't really have the ability to make our decision based on the contours of a particular project. It should be based on the, what do I say? The types of projects that would be allowed in the zone, and if they are a good fit for the other uses in that neighborhood. And given that the rest of the zone is BH, I think it becomes very difficult to say otherwise.
I think in the interest of transparency, I did read the recommendation of the planning board into the record at our last meeting, but I think it would probably be useful to read it into the record tonight as well, while the public hearing is open. This was dated April 6th, and it's the recommendation for 1575 Northampton Street, R1A to BH. Dear Councilor Vacan, please be advised that at its March 29th, 2016 meeting, the Holyoke Planning Board discussed the above referenced zone change request. After consideration of all information and testimony presented during the public hearing, the board voted 2-1 to recommend to the Ordinance Committee of the City Council that the zoning change request of R1A residential single family to BH highway business be approved. The board found that in compliance with the 2013 City Council order to market and sell the property, the proposed BH zone would be the highest and best use for the property. This being a gateway to the city, the existing parcels are all zoned BH. This parcel is an outlier. The board noted that during the public hearing, no one opposed the petition. In fact, people came forward in favor to the zone change to BH, signed by Mimi Panich, chair. So I think the record is complete relative to the public hearing. We have a motion before us. Councilor Jourdain?
Yeah, I'm just gonna offer that, I recently had a Ward 6 neighborhood meeting, and that the nearly 100 in attendance, of those that voiced an opinion, the overwhelming number was against. So I just wanted to offer that at this section of the meeting. I'll reference that at another time.
Thank you. Councilor McGivern?
I just want to talk about something we touched on at the first part of the public hearing at the last time we were here. And that's something that we often don't refer to, and I know it's getting old, but I think it's important, and that's the city's master plan itself. The city went a great length to develop a master plan, and what we're looking at is what is within that plan is called the I-91 corridor development. And it highlighted for a number of positive reasons off the interstate, both at the location of where Lynch School is and where the Holyoke Mall is, of careful, planned, and protection of commercial development. Commercial development is our link to new revenue, to new taxes, to the jobs that we need. And commercial development is what, as a city, we have to respect, is what keeps us going. It helps us protect our residential neighborhoods, which are second to none, but at the same time, it gives us the tax base and the job base that we so dearly need. This is new revenue that we're looking at. My concerns and my questions throughout this hearing have been partially answered this evening, and with an assurance that they will be answered before the property is developed, and that's the traffic mitigation, because we know this is a small corridor that is a gauntlet for a number of reasons in peak hours. We have no control of whether it's going to be a CVS, a Trader Joe's, a Starbucks, a Dunk. We know it's not going to be a Dunkin' Donuts unless the one across from Nick's Nest closes, which that traffic problem might not be a bad idea, because the former owner of that sold the queue into the drive-through short from what we were told it was going to be, and the city missed enforcing that. But we do have a control over use, and we have to make a stand sooner or later to protect and to enhance our tax base, to look at, with an educated look, good development. Is everything we're hearing about the actual plan the best? Probably not in our minds, but that again is not what we do. Unfortunately, we only do the zoning part, the use part. Is this commercial property or is it not? As far as the school argument goes, I would not send my child to Lynch School at this time. Our children deserve a new school, not an old school. The school department could not retrofit Lawrence School into an office building. How are they going to retrofit Lynch School into an office building and move some of the most special needs kids in this city into a building that is one of the oldest school buildings that we have? They deserve a new school, not an old school. We deserve to make this commercial property to enhance the tax base, to get the new jobs, but we have to insist that the traffic is mitigated correctly.
Thank you.
On the motion?
What is the wish of the committee? We have a motion before us to close the public hearing that has been seconded. Is everybody ready to vote? We are ready. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0. The public hearing is closed. Thank you very much for your attendance and the information that you've provided tonight, and I'm sure the committee will take everything under advisement.
We do have the recommendation from the planning board, so we have the ability to vote on.
We have a lot of people waiting. Do people wish to act on this at the moment, or? Can we move on to the agenda? We have a number of people waiting, and we got a late start.
90 days. Right?
Well, it has to come out of committee before it goes to the full council.
Yeah, but my point is, we have 90 days to make a decision. Yeah, the full council. So, I mean, as a general, I mean, we could either, I mean, what, yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
it's-
I'll motion that since we have the recommendation from the planning board, that we vote to approve the zone change from R1A to BH.
okay. Is there a second? Right?
I'm waiting.
No second here.
Not hearing a second, I guess we will table it for consideration at a future meeting.
Unless there's another motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll accept a motion to take up the next item.
Item number 3, so moved.
Item number 3 was filed by Councilor Jordan, order that the city council adopt an ordinance for water shutoff authority for the Holyoke Water Department.
I make a motion to remove it from the table?
All in favor?
Aye.
So-
Oh, good, the troops are here.
Councilor Jordan, as the maker of the order.
Yeah, my first order of business on this would be to invite our distinguished guests to come. Bill, Dave, as well as Commissioner Dwyer. I want to thank all of them for coming to speak to this. And
Welcome, everyone. Let's make sure you have microphones. Thank you, Councilor Jordan. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
and you got the stuff I sent this afternoon, right? Oh, good.
Thanks.
We should. Okay, I'll pass it over.
Oh, thanks. You have the policy already, do you?
David, I'm gonna go through the letter that you sent us to. I'm gonna go through that letter that you sent us to as well. Yeah. Okay, so just to tee this up, we have all been desperately interested in resolving once and for all the question of those who elect, for one reason or another, to not pay their sewer bills. This has caused a great deal of financial stress to the Sewer Enterprise Fund to the tune of about $700,000 a year. At some point, people need to pay their sewer bills because we only have about an 87% collection rate of the sewer fund money. Yet, the budget is premised on 100% collection rate. Now, 100 is a wonderful number. We don't really realistically ever expect to get 100 from anything, but 98 sure would be nice. That's about what we do on taxes, and I believe as a general rule of thumb, that's what the water department collects in the regular course of business of their own affairs. So, to that end, we have mightily tried to come to a number of potential resolutions of this. We have gone far and wide to do what we needed to do to create this shut-off authority. Originally, it was believed that we needed some special act to do this. Ultimately, it was determined that that was not the case. The Water Department, in consultation with Caracunya, provided to yours truly a email, which I apologize, I just got this in digitalized form today, but it is dated April 7th, that I will forward to all counselors subsequent to this meeting, but I'm going to go through it. It's only about a page and a half typed. It states that, and I'm just going to read this letter because I think this is going to be the whole enchilada here. In the letter, Assistant City Solicitor Cunha indicated that she is of the opinion that water service could be shut off as a preliminary step in shutting off sewer services for unpaid sewer fees. Attorney Cunha also indicated that there must be a clearly defined sewer shut-off policy in place to institute such a program. The waterworks can provide the necessary services in accomplishing this if certain conditions are met and agreed upon by all parties involved. They are as follows, and there are 5. The Sewer Commission must establish a sewer shutoff policy that is consistent with the procedures established under the Holyoke Waterworks water shutoff policy and in accordance with the conditions set forth by the Holyoke Law Department. Item number 2, the City Council must adopt an ordinance allowing the Sewer Commission to engage the services of the Holyoke Waterworks to shut off sewer usage by terminating water service for non-payment of sewer fees. That's the premise of tonight's meeting. The Holyoke Waterworks will act as an independent contractor in shutting off sewer usage and shall be indemnified by the city and/or the Sewer Commission for any issues arising out of shutting off the sewer. The waterworks will be reimbursed by either the Sewer Commission or customers for any costs incurred, including but not limited to the labor and/or overtime for water shut-off, turn-on, and legal fees in the event that the waterworks is litigated against as a result of a water service termination due to non-payment of sewer fees. And number 5, any fees or charges established that are associated with the water shut-off and turn-on will directly go to the waterworks. Accordingly, the first step is for the Sewer Commission to create a sewer shut-off policy. Me now ad-libbing outside the letter is my understanding is this is in the process of occurring or has occurred.
We're open and willing to work with the water
Okay.
department to establish such a policy. We have not started. I haven't,
Okay.
actually, tonight's the first time I've seen these documents, so
Okay, then we'll
we've
make
got
sure.
some work to do.
Got it. All right, so I did speak to the mayor on this, and he is supportive of this whole protocol and they told me that they're going to be speaking to the commission as well. If you're in agreement with this, I ask that you direct the Sewer Commission to do so at your earliest convenience. At the request of the Sewer Commission, my staff will work with the Sewer Commission personnel to ensure standardization between the department's shut-off policies. I also ask that the City Council request the assistance of the Law Department to draft language to establish an ordinance outlining the program. And this letter is signed off by Dave Conti, the manager of the Water Department. And so, number 1 is I asked David for the procedures for water shut-off now. I did forward those today to Kara. I got those from David today, and those have been forwarded over to the Law Department. What I would be requesting in this ordinance is that we spell this all out. We spell out the fees, we spell out the process, and that this mirror, as much as humanly possible, the current water department policies related to water shutoff, so that it's the same fees, it's the same people doing it, it's the same everything. That, and David can walk through what the noticing is when somebody would be potentially subjected to shutoff. There's a number of safeguards and steps that they put in place, including a certified mail, that they posted at the people's homes, that they mark their property, that they really go through extraordinary steps to let these folks know we're serious about doing this and please come pay the bill. And I'd like the Water Department to address the current procedure for water shutoff. Then we would like to create this ordinance which basically empowers this coordination, that we can support this in law and spell this all out. And then, of course, we would ask that the Sewer Commission adopt this shut-off policy and that these things all symbiotically work together, and then we get this done and move forward. So that's kind of the tee up on it, and I'd love, you guys are the boots on the ground that do this every day, and David, could you?
So who would like to take the lead?
Yeah, David, would you be willing to kind of talk about your water shut-off policy now? Because I think, if you would agree, it probably makes sense to mirror that as much as possible. So Could you kind of
Mr.
tell?
Conti, if you could run through that for us, that would be great.
The gentleman that handles the shut-off program, Michael.
Oh, is your button on? Is a green light on?
Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, Michael Graney, he's the business manager. He's the one that handles the shut-off program for the Hoyok Waterworks. He was unable to attend. But just to give you a brief overview as to what takes place, we typically wait till the second billing cycle. If payment's not made, and what we do at that point in time, we send a notice to the landowner, the property owner, that they're delinquent, the amount that's delinquent, and that they're gonna be subject to termination if payment's not made. Subsequent to that, 2 weeks after that, we send a second certified letter with a $50 demand that's placed on the particular account that their water is gonna be shut off within the next week. And then subsequent to that shut-off date, we go out there with our personnel, and what we'll do is we'll paint the shut-off box. We'll get on the shut-off the box to make sure that we can terminate service, and then we'll go out the next day and shut the water off. Usually, when we send the first notice out, 50 to 75% of the people pay. When the second demand notice goes out, we get another 50%. We typically shut off anywhere from 10 to 20 properties every month. That takes place during the months of March up until November. We don't shut off anybody's water in the wintertime. And we also run into issues when sometimes we have, when we do post the properties, some of the, if the property owner is delinquent, the tenants will come and they'll make payment, or sometimes the business manager will establish payment plans for these individuals. So that's pretty much the general procedure involving the shut-off program. What we do is when we shut your water off, there's a $100 shut-off turn-on fee that's due if we restore water service during working hours. If we restore water service after working hours, we charge an additional $100 on top of the $100 and full payment. And that second $100 covers the cost for 2 employees to go out there a time and a half to restore water service. We give the homeowner the option of waiting till the next day and paying the additional $100. But if they require it turned on that evening, we charge them the $100, the additional $100. So that's really what the costs are. So when we talk about fees that are incurred, if there is an individual that owes both water and sewer, there would be no additional fees other than what we're currently charging. I think we talked about if we're looking at shutting off water service for just non-payment of sewer, those fees would apply and those fees would go to the water department. So we would ask for separate checks. I think we would have to define what these procedures are, how the payments are going to be made, as far as checks to the water, to the sewer department. And I think we would also have to talk to the sewer department. There'd have to be a contact person over there who would determine whether or not there's many instances where people would call and they would ask if they could make a 50% payment and then pay the balance off over the course of time. We would not be able to make that decision for the sewer department. There would have to be a contact person there that would discuss that and make those arrangements. So, we haven't really gotten into the particular details with the sewer department. This is all we were waiting to see what your opinion was on this letter.
So if I can just ask a couple questions. So given the fee structure that you've described, if the sewer commission was open to adopting essentially your policies and those fees, based on what you guess going into the future would happen, do you think that would be sufficient to get it going, at least initially, and then we could see how it practically worked out?
I'm sure we would, we'd have to get a copy of our procedures over to the sewer commission, and we'd have to sit down with the law department to make sure that there's a standardization between the two departments, and there'd have to be some additional language that would have to be included in those procedures, which would include non-payment for shut-off of termination of water service for non-payment of sewer. And so I think there would have to be some effort placed on looking at those procedures and modifying them to accommodate the sewer department.
Thank you. Councilor Lopez?
David, you don't have a payment, any payment set up for anyone, they have to pay
Oh, we do establish payment plans, yes.
Oh, you do?
Yes, we have, when we send out the initial notice, a lot of times, some of the property owners will come and establish a payment plan.
Can you give me an example how that work?
Well,
I mean, if I owe you $300, I
owe me
pay you $5
$300
a week?
We ask for 50%.
Okay.
And then if you could pay the balance off by the next billing cycle. We try to work with the people as to what they can, you know, what's accommodating to them.
Okay.
A lot of times when we have some accounts where we get to the point where we have shut them off, they come in and they can't come up with the full amount, and they've agreed to pay the balance within 30 days, and we work with the people. We work with the people, so. But as far as I can't make that case for the sewer department, that would be, you know, for their charges, that's somebody over there would have to make those decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Jordan?
I think the other point too, David, is, so basically you could be 6 months in arrears before you would be in, like, 2 billing cycles, you said, before you're sort of in some sort of jeopardy of this situation, right?
Yes.
And if you look at the average, I mean, the key is when you stay on this stuff, the bills don't get too big, right? The problem is when we allow people to go years and years and years of non-pay, then they got this monster bill, and then the payment agreement would be crazy, right? So if you get a situation where somebody owes us $300-400, they come in with 50% is $200, and then they got 3 months to pay the remainder by the end of the next billing cycle. You know, they're dividing up $200 a couple different ways. It's reasonable, you know? I'd like to hear Bill's thoughts too, from the sewer side.
As you all know, this has been a tool that we've longed for many, many years to help us with our collections.
We've tried to give it to you for many years.
And I want to thank the Water Commission for their willingness to step up and offer this service. I think it's great. We haven't gotten into the details, but from what I've been hearing and talking with David, this is a great program. Consistency, uniformity is really important, you know, so we don't have mixed signals and confusion. So to adopt an existing policy that the water department has, I think is definitely the way to go. I've talked with my commissioners, and they're very excited, very interested in working to get this in place and to give it a go. Like I said, we've been waiting and hoping for this for many, many years, and we're looking forward to putting it in place. So I think it's great.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Kara, do we have to suspend our rules?
Oh, no. Yeah, go ahead, Kara, yeah.
Sure. So I just want to be very clear, and I gave you a copy of the opinion that Dave referenced in his letter, and I just want to be really clear that what we're talking about is a policy to essentially terminate the sewer service, and making turning off the water one part of that. We're not turning off the water for non-payment of sewer. We're turning off the sewer service for non-payment of sewer. That opinion of the law department has not changed, but we're developing a sewer shutoff policy that incorporates turning the water off as the first step. But part of what, and I outlined this in the letter, I mean, part of what the DPW and Sewer Commission needs to determine is what are those next steps if the water is turned off and the person still hasn't paid their bill, because shutting off the water does not shut off the sewer. You can still use the sewer, and so we need to have a further.
I mean, realistically, Kara, if you got no water, I mean,
no, but it's important for the council to know legally, because I mean, this is where there comes a potential challenge, and Dave raised that in his letter, and so the Sewer Commission needs to have a full policy of what those other steps might be. It's not just that we're not. So we just need to be clear, and I think certainly starting with the water shutoff policy, that's going to be one component of it. But then, what other notices is the Sewer Commission going to send out? What is going to happen if for some reason somebody still doesn't pay? you know, what are those next steps? What are the fees the sewer commission is also going to charge on top of the fees that we're gonna charge through the waterworks for the shut off of the water? So those are, the details that need to be worked out. And what I did in the draft, I mean, obviously it's up to you how specific you want the ordinance to be. The brief draft I gave you is less specific and states that the sewer commission will develop a policy for the sewer shut off, that will include working and using the waterworks. So, it's up to you if you want to spell out the whole process in the ordinance, or if you want it to be part of a policy that the DPW has.
Thank you for that, Kara. Personally, I prefer to keep the ordinance general and let the specifics be dealt with in the policies. But I would encourage the sewer commissioners to follow the similar policies of the water company, even as it relates to the payment plans. You know, just so there would be the consistency with the following through part. But then I guess the sewer commission would have to have a couple additional steps. But Kara, under Board of Health, I would think that there would have to be running water in a residence for the property to be able to be occupied from a public health perspective.
Yeah.
So it seems like that would be a tool for the sewer commission relative to a second step if the water was turned off and they still hadn't paid. Because the idea is that they're gonna.
That brings up a whole nother
Oh,
issue
okay.
of, you know, if the city is condemning a property, we're potentially responsible to relocate those tenants. and
Okay.
It creates potentially, I mean, we deal with some of those, obviously the water department shuts
Right.
water off and we deal with it, but
Okay.
if it's a apartment building where the tenants are not at fault, the city is potentially
Right.
liable for providing alternative housing for those, so.
Thank you. Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, my question is, let's talk about the apartment blocks for a minute. David, in the past, I'm assuming you've been doing this for quite a long time. There must have been some apartment block that had people in it that elected not to pay their water bill. I'm sure that's,
Many cases like that.
yeah.
Many-
So to walk us through, no sense dealing with the unknown here, let's just deal with the realities. They don't pay, Joe the landlord. How have you handled that? You went up, you shut them off, and then I'm sure the tenants went running down the housing court looking for either some order or whatever, or did the walk us through those scenarios.
I don't typically get involved with that. Again, Michael Graney would. There have
Okay.
been many instances where we have shut water on, we're court ordered to turn water back on.
Okay.
That happens. There are times when the Board of Health does step in and prohibits us from shutting water off. There are instances where you have elderly, where you have infants, where those become issues. So again, they're handled on a case-by-case basis. But as far as specifics, I don't typically do that
Okay.
perform that task.
Well, we can always have Michael back, but my point is, I would just as soon shut it off, you know, as far as these blocks go, and then let somebody run into, because the people that are gonna run in to get us to, the order to make us do the alternative housing, the first order that's gonna come is turn the water back on, so then if you turn the water back on, we're not gonna have to provide alternative housing. But my point is, on those, it's gonna put the matter in front of the housing court, and the landlord's gonna have to make a response. Yeah. No, I mean, obviously, we would turn the water back on before we would have the alternative housing situation. But my point is, the landlord is subjecting himself to damages from these tenants by putting them in that situation, is my point. And I think we need to play hardball with these slumlords, if we get any of those, to force the issues that we have. And then, if we sniff them out, then we start taking collection actions before we have big bills. I mean, we need to be suing these people, we need to be going after these people, no holds barred, no mercy on any of these landlords that are shortchanging us on taxes, shortchanging us on water fees. I mean, this is why we're in the shape we're in, right? Abandoned building, central here, That all started with the unpaid tax bill. That all started with the unpaid water bill. You know, so we gotta flush these slumlords out early, right? Because if they can't pay their bills, then they're the slumlord of tomorrow.
I just wanted to make 2 points. The first is, and not that you would be involved, but we would need the cooperation from the Sewer Commission, that as far as the administrative portion of this program, the Water Department is certainly not going to be issuing these notices for non-payment of sewer. Somebody at the Sewer Department, there's going to have to be assigned to send out the notices or coordinate the notices with our department so that they're sent out after the second quarter, and then there's a demand or a second notice sent out. We don't have the staff to accommodate them in that regard. And then the other question is going to be where we get into situations where we're just shutting off sewer, there's going to be time and effort on our part to go out there and to mark these services, make sure that we can get on them. So there's going to have to be some kind of discussion as to those costs or those services provided by our department, because again, we do it for the water. There's going to be a lot more, cases where we're going to be shutting off services for non-payment of sewer. So how am I going to provide this task? Right, but again, if I'm shutting off somebody's water for non-payment of sewer, I'm going to collect $100 for that. But then there's a lot involved in going out there. A lot of times we come across these service boxes we can't get on. Some of these service boxes have to be dug. So in these instances, these are the details we're going to have to work out with the sewer department, and there's going to have to be cooperation on their end, because I'm not going to want to incur those costs for their benefit. Do you understand? Does that make any sense?
Well,
Well, it's all one team in that way. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if there's a box for water. If there's a box for water that you can't find, that's your responsibility you guys should have that anyways, right? I mean, water access to water shutoff valves, you should have that to your satisfaction in the ordinary course of affairs anyways, right?
Well, when they do these sidewalk replacement projects throughout the city, a lot of these boxes get buried. Okay? So you got a situation where you got a water box that's buried in a sidewalk, and I rip up this sidewalk to get to this water service. Who's going to pay to put that sidewalk back?
I see.
You see? This happens all the time. These contractors go through and they bury these boxes on these brand-new streets, and you call me up when I dig up this brand-new sidewalk. So this is where there's going to have to be some discussion about these procedures, and I'm going to need their cooperation.
Sure.
We're going to make this program work.
Right. Fair enough.
Counselor McGivern?
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. Bill, it's a long time coming, and I think we all understand the benefits of this and what it's outlined to do. David outlined some things that the water department do on a case-by-case basis in terms of handling each of their shutoffs, payment plans, recognizing the hardships, recognizing things that what do you have to do with the court, the Board of Health, that you may have to react to. Will your staff be able to step up and handle the sewer shutoffs, even though it's a water shutoff, in terms of dealing with the case-by-case, how can we get this back on track? And I think it's also important, if we do end up in court, that we show the court that we've made not only reasonable efforts to collect the bill, but reasonable efforts with the individuals or the property owners in terms of the circumstances that led to the shutoff.
This is a matter of priorities, and this is very high priority for us to be able to take advantage of. And we've spent a lot of time over the years with sending out mailings and trying all kinds of ways to encourage folks to pay their bills. And this is a better tool that we have to work with, and there's new procedures. Obviously, we're going to look to water for guidance, and they're most familiar with these kinds of situations. And again, cooperation between the two departments is key. Our staff is, we're all looking to solve the problem. From me down to my office staff that deals with these payments and these problems on a day-to-day basis. and it's a matter of prioritizing the effort, and, you know, we're gonna figure out how to do this and learn from the water department and follow as consistently as we can, the same procedures, so it's most effective. And we're gonna make it work. If we're gonna be able to cooperate and work these details out and have this tool for us, you know, this, like I said, we've been waiting and wanting this for many years. And I think, you know, my staff in the commission, you know, share this sentiment that this is top priority, and we're gonna make it work.
Will you
We'll
do a
make the
payment
time.
schedule?
We do have payment schedules. Again, that's a case-by-case situation. A lot of times we'll get requests for abatements or reductions in invoices that originate from the water department, many times for meter readings and whatnot. And over time, we've engaged in various payment plans with folks that have stepped up and asked for consideration. So we do the same. We don't have maybe the same policies and thresholds to work with, but again, the commission takes it on a case-by-case situation, and some of them work and some of them don't, but we do have payment plans.
And you'll continue to send a demand notice first?
Yeah, whatever the procedure ends up being, we'll send out demand notices. We'll have to adjust our other procedures and some of the other notices we may be sending out, depending on how we need to integrate those, or maybe we don't need those as those other notices that we've been sending out when we get this in place. So we'll make adjustments. We'll have to look at how it all integrates with our current practices and make adjustments.
And are you able to dedicate a person on your staff to be equal or, you know, comparable to Mike Graney on the water department staff, and to continue to handle each of these shut-offs after they're turned over to the water department?
Yeah, right now, I would say my office manager, who handles a lot of the abatements and adjustments currently, and discusses those, brings those into our board when necessary, she would be the one that would be our point, I think, in handling those situations on a case-by-case basis in the office.
I think Mike and her are the two oldest people in the city besides yourself in terms of years of employment.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, no, my office manager has me by a couple of years.
So has everybody here tonight had a chance to look at the draft that Kara distributed with A through D on it? Have it? Does anybody have any questions or concerns about that, taking the general approach? Because we know the details you have to get down to in the procedural and the policy level.
And then I think the other question is more detail, less detail, more general, and then you guys have these respective policies, and whatnot, so, you know, we can do it more or less, whatever you think is best, really, you know, once you iron out, and obviously the DPW has to do some catch-up to where you guys are at. So my question, and just thinking this through timeline-wise, this is an important item to be adopted by us pretty soon. And, you know, we have a new FY17 budget coming. The mayor is really predicating a lot of solving some of the gap in the sewer department based on getting this up and running in FY17. My question is this something we could put together in the next few weeks, so that by, say, you know, June, we can have this adopted, basically? Okay. Yeah. All right, because I mean, we'll pass the ordinance as quickly, you know, I feel this committee is very, you know, wants to move this forward as quickly as possible to get this in place. Once you give it your thumbs up, you know, you and Bill and the law department, and get that back to us, and then we just have maybe at our next ordinance meeting, in a couple of weeks, if you guys could at least feel comfortable with the ordinance language, and then step 2, you guys adopt these policies in place after that. But if, with an eye towards getting those policies done before July 1st, if you could, because I know, you know, the budget would appreciate your efforts.
We'll make it a priority.
Thank you.
So from your perspective, if you're comfortable with the language with Kara, our intention would be to review this with any edits at the next meeting and recommend it to the council to adopt at the first meeting in June. That would be our goal, and that way then you're building your policies and procedures under the ordinance, and you know the council is already there. So, and the main thing that I heard of the concern of the water company, and I just want to commend you for being open to taking on the additional responsibility relative to the water shutoff and finding them under the sidewalks, et cetera. But that, I think, is the biggest concern I heard in terms of cost liabilities. But reading under C, the Board of Public Works Sewer Commission shall adopt a schedule of fees to be charged in connection with the termination and/or restoration of the sewer service. It would seem under that, maybe there could be some structure developed for the unusual circumstances where the box is under the sidewalk.
Well, I don't have any problem meeting with the sewer commission and discussing, you know, their feelings on these different issues. I think Bill and I are gonna have to sit down and talk about these things, and you know, certainly we'll do it as quickly as possible. But again, it's just getting into the details and working out each situation that we're faced with on a day-to-day basis, but everything can be worked out.
Well, I think we're fortunate to have all of you in here with that approach to this problem, and I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a better thing for the city as a whole. So we're very grateful about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So did Councilor Lopez want to say something?
Oh, Councilor Lopez. Back. Right.